everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Fair Taxes, Fair Future rally, or Follow the Church rally here. My name is Nina George. I'm with CASHA, Kelowna Atheist Skeptics and Humanists Association, and co-organizers of this group is Advocacy Canada and BC Humanist Association. And we are here today for one reason. We're standing in front of City Hall to ask Kelowna City Council to be accountable for our tax money when they give out religious property tax exemptions. They do this, they give out these exemptions through the permissive tax exemptions. And the PTEs are given to local charities and nonprofits to provide services to Kelowna residents. When we examined the religious property tax exemptions, it cost city taxpayers $1 million every year. So we are paying for religious properties through the property tax exemptions. What we discovered, surprisingly, is that some of these organizations leverage their savings to fund agendas of exclusion, political lobbying, Bible printing, anti-abortion causes, and overseas missions. This is not in line with the permissive tax exemptions. All the permissive tax exemptions are for local community residents. So we are here today to ask City Council to hit pause, to stop the automatic 5-year exemptions and take a closer look, just like they do with every other budget item. It's time we ask, are these tax breaks really serving the local public good, or are they just historical privileges that we give out? So first to speak after me is Ian Bushfield of BC Humanists, and he's going to be talking about what happens in throughout the province with these permissive tax exemptions.
Thank you, Nina. It's such an honor to be out here in Kelowna on a beautiful summer day. I love coming to this city, making the drive up from Vancouver, where I live. I'm sorry for taking up space in your city. I do want to thank both CASHA and Advocacy Canada for help putting this on, and obviously recognize the territory here of the Sa'ila people on which we reside and hold this rally. There's so much going on across the province. Everyone is watching. So no matter what happens here today, remember that municipalities from Abbotsford to Zebelos are watching and thinking about these same issues. So don't get discouraged. That's the main message. It's a hard fight because these are deep, entrenched attitudes, but we can win and we are seeing change. And I want to talk a little bit about some of that we are seeing. Most recently, we've seen, because we at the BC Humanist Association monitor this issue closely, right? We follow what the changes are, what the policies are, and so we have notifications for when municipalities review their permissive tax exemptions. Up in the city of Terrace last year, they said, we are giving out too many. We can't afford this. Our homeowners, our small businesses can't afford the tax increases we have to put on them every year because we're handing out all of these exemptions to every church, and it's mostly churches. You look across the province, I printed off the list for Kelowna. There's a handful of non-Christian churches. It's open to any place of worship, but it is usually churches because of history in this province, in this country. In Terrace, they said, we don't want to give out unlimited exemptions, so they set a hard cap. And they said, if you ask for more than this collectively, we're going to reduce everyone's permissive tax exemption, and some will be owable. It's kind of a flat exemption. Other municipalities are taking different approaches. The village of Nakusp has recently gotten in the news for rejecting some permissive tax exemption applications because the applicants didn't include required documentation. They asked applicants to show that they need it. A simple ask. Do you need this exemption? Do you have enough money to cover? Because they are asking for a privilege. They are asking for a subsidy from the municipality. And so they ask for financial documents, and some of the applicants refuse to provide them. So why are we giving exemptions to organizations that don't show their need? It should be that simple. This is the good governance thing Nina's going to come back to. Other municipalities do what they're asking for here and have some kind of test, a benefits test, to show that there is value to the broader community and not just the religious group for this. The city of Victoria, famously, or most prominently in our list, has this kind of benefits test where it asks, deep questions. Who do you support? Who do you promote? What is the value you provide to the broader community? Some organizations simply come back and say, well, we give out Bibles. No more missionaries. Other organizations will come back and say, we spread the good word of Jesus Christ. That should be enough. And I think in those cases, they deserve as much of a tax exemption as a knitting club. We love our knitting clubs, but they're kind of just for the people who love to go and knit. No offense to people who like knitting. So there are ways to approach this, and we're seeing it across the province. The other easy way, if a test is too bureaucratic, is what we've seen in the village of Caramios or the city of Vancouver, if you've heard of it, a small one, is give no permissive tax exemptions. Cut them all off and say, if you are an organization that thinks it provides value to the community, apply for one of the many grants we give out. It's just that easy. Vancouver gives no permissive tax exemptions to churches, places of worship, or most any other groups except a few historic groups, and ask them to apply for civic grants, which are then voted on by council. And that's an approach that is fair and transparent with the public money. At the BC Humanist Association, we're using all of these collective examples to draft our own guidance so that we can give this to every municipal council who says they don't have the time to write this policy. We'll say, here's a policy, just adopt it, have your staff implement it. It'll be that easy. So we'll have that on our website, hopefully this fall, pretty soon. I want to bring it back to how this is, beyond just Kelowna. This discussion about what is the public benefit of religion is one that is happening in many spheres of our society as we are growing more secular. At the federal government level, we saw this last fall, the House of Commons Finance Committee adopted one of the BCHA's recommendations to revisit whether advancement of religion should be a charitable purpose. And they said it's worth looking at that because it's automatically granted to theistic groups, but not to humanist groups who don't have a God. You have to believe in a God to get charity status or meet one of the other criteria. But it's easier if you believe in God. And the Finance Committee adopted that and said that should be in the budget. We should update our charity law from when it was written in the 19th century and is based on old English common law and move this forward. That generated some outroar during the election, but the discussion is moving forward. This changing discourse is important. It's why this rally is so important today. City Council didn't want to hear you directly, so it's why we're out on the steps, out on the grass outside, talking to the people directly. The winds are with us, my friends. We need to keep building this wall between church and state. We know what happens when it crumbles. We can look south. We can see the danger. It's a threat to every one of our rights. That's what Amber's going to talk about. We can't let white Christian nationalism defeat the forces of inclusion, of progress, of secularism. Thank you all for coming out. Let's keep up this fight, and good work, everyone. I'll pass it to Nina.
Thank you, Ian. So I just want to briefly explain what Policy 327 is. It's to give out property tax exemptions to religious organizations, public parks, hospitals, private schools, and cultural organizations and social service organizations. And there is no doubt that all the other groups are local groups that provide services to local residents in an inclusive and non-discriminatory manner. But what if the badminton club all of a sudden said, we're not going to allow the queer community to come and play badminton? Would we be giving them tax exemptions? What if they said, well, you can come, we welcome you, but you can't actually play? And that is what the churches do here. So hospitals, private schools, and religious organizations receive a 5-year exemption, and all the other charities and nonprofits receive a 1-year exemption. On paper, religious organizations are supposed to use the property tax exemptions to provide services to local residents, but in practice, there's very little scrutiny. We read their 2020 applications. For some of them, they barely fill out the forms. So the value of religiously owned property is approximately $300 million for 50-plus organization. Now, the city says it costs the taxpayers approximately $400,000 for city services, but what they're not telling you is that it costs $600,000 to Kelowna city residents for schools, libraries, hospitals, and public safety. That's where the $1 million comes in. We are actually paying $1 million, not just $400,000. So while we pay to them, the religious organizations, they are free to donate that money elsewhere, and they don't have to provide services to the community if they don't want to. So I'm just going to give you a brief list of what some of the churches are doing. So the Evangel Tabernacle Church on Gordon is exempted from $63,000 in property tax, but they donated $289,000 and $50,000 stayed in Kelowna. Trinity Baptist exempted from $145,000 in property tax, donated $221,000 in donations, and only $35,000 stayed in Kelowna. Willow Park Church is exempted from $73,000 in property taxes. They donated $274,000 and zero stayed in Kelowna. Meanwhile, we've spoken with some city councilors who've said things like, oh, the program is working fine, there is no discrimination, we don't have time for this. This is not on our agenda. Well, on the agenda, they're going to be approving 5 years this fall. This is why we are here. The money that is donated outside of Kelowna is for social good. That's what one of the city councilors said. So they're okay with us sending money out to proselytizing groups all around the world, and we have needs here. So what about the 85% of the taxpayers who don't use these facilities? Only 15% of the Kelowna population actually use these facilities. Shouldn't accountability matter more than automatic give-outs? We demand that City Council be accountable for our tax money. So I'm going to ask Amber Hall to talk about the discrimination from Advocacy Canada.
Thank you. One of the main reasons why we're here today is because of the discrimination that is experienced by a large percentage of our community. We do acknowledge that there are churches that do a lot of good in our community. We're not saying that to get rid of the exemptions altogether. We're saying that this is a policy that was created over 50 years ago that needs to be examined. Many of our churches have taxes that are removed from their halls, their basketball courts, their parking lots. For example, there's one church that owns 6.4 acres, and most of that is just land that's undeveloped, and they receive a tax exemption for all of that unused land. The tax exemptions specifically state that it's supposed to be for the building of worship. One of the big problems that we have is that many of these churches do not allow gay people to be members of their church. They think that being transgender is a sin, and they don't think that, these tax exemptions are not benefiting anybody that they deem as unworthy. Sorry, one second. Faith-based organizations here in Kelowna continue to uphold policies that exclude, marginalize, or discriminate against 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals. Out of the 37 faith-based organizations that we identified, only 4 of them were identified as safe and affirming spaces here in Kelowna. No organization that discriminates should be entitled to public subsidies. In 2021, 54% of our population, it's now, Nina has updated that number to 85% of the population is non-secular or religious. But if we look at the faith-based organizations that you can rent from, they make money on, for example, 10 different spaces, and members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community are not allowed to use those spaces. In accordance with the 2040 community plan that the City of Kelowna has put forth, Chapter 9 talks about equity-based approach, and they say in their own words that the resources are not always fairly distributed, and that an equity analysis is needed. And objective 9.4.3 is to identify areas to celebrate growing diversity. And I do believe, we all believe, that one of the ways to celebrate that diversity is by removing these taxes, or at least pausing them and examining them as part of their own plan that they have created. And it's not just the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, it's also women's rights that are being taken away from some of these churches and faith-based organizations. And we really just don't believe that tax money should be going to organizations that are discriminatory against our population. So thank you.
Thank you, Amber. So I'm just going to be brief, and what we are asking for. We're asking for a pause of the upcoming 5-year approval. let's not rubber stamp another half decade of exemptions. They can give them a 1-year approval and then create a community task force next year for better scrutiny. There was a task force 20 years ago, and they took out daycares and offices from the churches, and they have to pay taxes on that. So there is reasons to have another community task force because Kelowna has changed in 20 years. We want to review Policy 327 transparently with public input and evaluate religious exemptions like all others based on real, measurable, and local benefit that is in line with the 2040 Kelowna official city plan. Right now, it's an outdated policy and we need to modernize Policy 327. We are not saying to eliminate all religious tax exemptions. We're saying we should play by the same rules. We are standing here because the city belongs to all of us and not just those with outdated historical privileges. Please call your city councilor, write to your city councilor, and tell them that we need change. They are going to approve of a 5-year exemption. They can change that. It's within the policy. They can change it for 1 year or 2 years and create a community task force. Thank you.